This is a DeMarie Productions podcast.
We're doing introductions.
Yeah, we're doing introductions first. Tell me.
No, you tell me. Like, what have you been doing this week? What are you excited about?
Well, Aramis and I have been working a lot on possible advertisers. Hello. For the podcast, which has been really fun.
Thank you, Aramis.
Yes. And just kind of working on scheduling this. The thing is that with you guys, there's like 4 main people that have to be here for this to happen. And if one of you is not available, like it throws the whole week off.
I would argue that the 3 people here plus yourself are the most...
I'm not doing this without you.
You could do it.
We've barely begun, and Bill's like, listen, if I don't make it, I don't make it.
If I don't make the cut. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
But no, I think like, welcome to the pod. This is about introductions. This is our first episodes. I think the intention is to give like a quick little explanation about what we're doing here and what this is going to be.
What is this pod going to be about?
Yeah. At least what we hope it's going to be about.
If I'm riding on the F train right now, or actually the G train to the L.
Is that your train?
That's my train. If I'm on the G and I'm tuning into this, what is this pod going to be about? Why do I give a fuck?
For me, what I'm excited about, obviously it's called In Good Company. I mean, it's meant to be conversations that you and I have always had for many years now since we've known each other. Like, I find that when I walk away from our conversations, I'm always like feeling really informed. I'm feeling like happy about that, whatever it is that I shared. I'm feeling like supported in it. And so I was like, oh, I think that could be really valuable for other people to listen to. So would you want to do a podcast with me? And then we got to today.
And I think it's just fun to talk, although we usually do this over cocktails and it's a little bit more free form. But yeah, we're going to cover business.
My default is to see everything through a business lens. Not that I can only talk about business in life, but that I'm excited about talking about business and marketing and advertising. And because of the nature of our work, I think entertainment is like another category that people can expect to hear us very easily slip into conversation about.
I think our crossover points are marketing and creativity, for sure. Yeah. And like just art, I'll say, like big fat 3-letter word art, like whatever that means. You are a naturally born entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. I am not. Well, absolutely, I am not. Of all the things I am, that I am not. And I am as much not that as you are that.
You are impressive. My...
Go ahead, say it.
Elder. Statesman of a friend. If I were to introduce...
Am I your oldest friend?
No. You know what's funny? Somebody one time told me, in New York City, if you don't have a friend at least twice your age, you're doing the city wrong.
I agree with that.
And I 1000% agree with that.
Totally agree with that.
And I'm very lucky. My oldest friend is actually Cynthia, who I love and adore. We did the Eclipse together, not to date the podcast, but genuinely love Cynthia. No, I think that if I were to introduce you to somebody, I would say he's a cool dad from Brooklyn, dad of 2. Awesome wife, Miss Abby. You are a business executive, always in the creative space. You've gotten a career at Chipotle. You've worked at HelloFresh, Ladder Sport. You've done Kachava. Would you say you specialize in the food?
I would say I backed into food.
Yeah.
But I was at Christie's art house, right? And wearing a suit to work every day and feeling like, what's her name from...
Charlotte from Sex and the City?
That's what I was absolutely
I knew that was your reference.
No, just feeling like rock center in my little suit with my new wife, with my brand new baby. And I was feeling like, oh my God.
You're from Philly.
From Philly. But this was like my make it New York moment. I was like, holy shit, I have a couple bucks in my pocket, right? So then the Chipotle opportunity came up and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is just, as much as I thought it would be super cool to achieve those things and do those things, I was like, I'm not a suit person. I'm not like a guy who like works to sell like $30 million paintings. So like the Chipotle thing came up and I thought that was just a really cool opportunity to do. And then ever since I've sort of been pigeonholed into like, oh, you're in food.
I think that when people think about DeMarie Productions, they also think that we specialize in food. And it's like truly not the case. It's just because we're friends.
Yeah. So how did we meet? Do you want me to talk about it or you want to talk about it?
Well, yeah. We met because of HelloFresh. I had already been working with them as a independent company producing content.
A couple. You did a couple shoots with us before we ever met. Yeah.
And then you came on board as, well, you ended up as VP of something.
First of all, bitch, I didn't come on board. I was already on board. I took over
the team. Were you really?
I was there. Yes, I was there.
Like totally 2016,
2017 I joined. right? So 2017,
I think
joined.
2016 was my first project.
Right. So you were there for a bit. That's what I'm saying.
I'm before you. I'm more important.
You did like Lauren Conrad and a bunch of other.
Yeah, we did a bunch of fun stuff. Actually, the first thing that we ever did with them that was like funny and like major was the Real Housewives of New Jersey live stream.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Melissa Gorga.
I'll pretend to know who exactly
That's fine. I don't remember exactly how we were introduced or who introduced us, other than probably Kate.
Yeah, like overnight, I took over the team. So I went from being like a functional lead on the team to taking over the whole brand and creative team at HelloFresh for the US. And they were like, hey, by the way, we're in the middle of a shoot. We would love your help on like rounding out the creative, all of it, right?
Yeah.
And so we took over and it was like, I'm starting to put on my hat of like, how do we move this thing forward? Because I wasn't so sure that the other side of the house understood exactly how to do one of these, although of course they did. I just didn't know it at the time. And so we met and then like instantly hit it off as friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the time I was only doing talent procurement and you were the one who like really kind of opened the door for me to bring in the full production resources that we were capable of doing.
Which is kind of what I meant. Like when I was saying, I'm not trying to shit talk anybody, but the other side of the house was like, we buy things a la carte.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's fucking stop all that bullshit, right? There's continuity here. Yeah, with our partners. Right. There's an opportunity for continuity here. There's relationship building. You want to shoot with somebody and work with somebody over and over again because they get to know me and I get to know them and how we work. And you're infamous for your time and action planning, right? Like all of that. But that became my go-to, and that's what the hell that.
Well, how was I introduced to you? Like, what did people say?
Oh my God, they were like,
"Be honest.
Wait till you meet this bitchy gay."
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't say that. They said, Frank from DeMarie is coming in. We want you guys to meet. We want to talk about creative. We want to talk about production. We were working with Jessica Alba. That had already been identified, I think, at that point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because my next action was like, okay, you got to go to California and sit in front of Jessica and pitch her 7 creative ideas or whatever, right? That was my first act. So that's how we met.
Okay, but what they say about me was the question. I love how you brought it back around to Billy. I know what they said about me. I'm fabulous. Yes. But do you know my career past, actually? Everything that I do currently is under the DeMarie umbrella. So I started off, though, in tech. And so DeMarie Analytics was the first entrepreneurial company that I had that, like, we fully raised a round of capital and we did, we took on investors and we did the full kind of tech go at it. And this was in 2011. I was raised in Seattle. I then moved to New York to go to college, dropped out after like the first year.
Plus we're skipping Jersey.
I was born in New Jersey.
And what's the significance?
Which I don't hate. If people have the time, I explain I was born in New Jersey, but I was raised in Seattle.
I'm just shitting on you. I just like to pull
it back. You're from
Philly.
It's not that fucking better.
Oh.
Okay, well, did I just lose half the podcast?
Yeah, there's a huge fucking difference.
After college, I went into tech because I was a casting associate at a production company and nobody at the time was valuing social media for the models. And yet agencies were trying to negotiate on behalf of the model, like, oh, $10,000 to put this on your Twitter or whatever it was. And they were just guessing. And so inadvertently, I fell backwards into developing this platform meant to analyze how valuable influence was. Mm-hmm. And then we would license that back to talent agencies, but also to brands who were trying to have an honest conversation about how much they should pay talent.
We always are, and we never know, right?
That's right.
I think to 7 people we want to work with, I have no idea what they cost.
To this day, when it comes to influencer valuations, I can have all the facts and figures for you. The second that your nephew says, but can we get Justin Bieber? Yeah. Then it's like, all the research is out the window. And it's like, that executive is like, well, my nephew thinks they're cool. Let's go with them.
It's typical.
Yes. Yeah, very typical. Yeah. After running that for so many years and offering it to clients, a lot of the clients were like, well, can you just like create the content too? Yeah. So we would do the talent procurement and have the negotiations between talent agencies and brands. But then we opened up DeMarie Productions to specifically create content for clients. And that is then when we that's how the HelloFresh connection works.
We met that way. And then we sort of backed into DeMarie Tech too, because then I started coming to, like, we did Jessica first. And then we were like, oh, who should we do next? We keep doing.
We had a good run. We did a lot of big names.
Jessica notwithstanding, we had done a series of blonde-headed white women and felt that was like, among other things, problematic for the brand. And I certainly thought, like, this should be way more representative of the people who buy the product and the people who work here in the city we live in and all of those things. And so you and I, that's when we backed into DeMarie Tech. I was like, who else can we work with that we haven't had on the slate already, that hasn't passed through halls as a name to work with, right? And so then we got into a bunch of others together.
And over the years, we've been able to, I've done many different entrepreneurial things. I think collectively I've opened 7 different companies, probably shut 2 down. You know, I've done the agenting, I've done casting, we've done the tech, we've done production. So my worldview when it comes to entertainment is always kind of on the behind the camera side of things. Of course, I could be in front of the camera as well.
I was going to say,
Let me
you
be very
seem pretty
clear.
fucking comfortable right now.
I'm a trained thespian from my high school career. I have the credentials.
Classically trained.
But I do. I love producing. I love all the different aspects of like the Hollywood and entertainment world on the business side of things. Then over the years, we've just kind of developed this friendship, and that's what brings us to this podcast and all the people that we're going to have on it, hopefully. Because I think that what we both find most intriguing when talking to people is not necessarily getting a read through of the resume, but more so the story behind that.
Yes, and I don't give a fuck about that. Like the resume I can read on somebody's website.
Well, the resume is like an outline that allows us to then maybe ask some interesting questions like, how did you get that? What was that experience like? I think that somebody who would want to listen to this podcast is a millennial or Gen Z person who's like in the beginning of their career or like interested in potentially becoming an entrepreneur or working in marketing and advertising, and then all the way up to like the executive level, people that can relate to the insight that you have.
Don't forget
much
the old
better
heads.
than I have. Really, what are the trends in marketing and advertising, and what are brands doing that we think looks cool?
Yeah, and I think sharing, you were just talking about like close down several businesses along the way. That's what I like to dig into because I don't want to just hear the success.
Totally.
You wouldn't be sitting on the couch if it wasn't success.
Right.
But how did you get there is not a linear path.
Oh, I've got some stories.
Oh, yeah.
And then our goal is to bring in people to be in good company with that are creative, are experts in the different topics that we're going to discuss on the pod.
So speaking of guests, speaking of introductions, how do you find yourself most authentically or usefully introduced to someone?
Introductions in business are very tricky, and like I'm very specific about introductions because I have worn so many hats. I think that people often get really confused about how to introduce me. Like if you ask my family, like, what does Frank do? They would all have a different answer for you.
Yeah.
And so for me, when somebody can identify a value that I could provide for somebody and like actually articulate that, that to me is the most successful introductions in business. And it just takes an understanding of like over time building the relationship with somebody so that they can properly introduce me to somebody that I can actually help or add value to or point in the direction of to achieve whatever it is that I'm being introduced to them for. Does that make sense?
It does. I like there's in the vein, and I say this way too often, but like one for the real, one for a meal, right?
Totally.
Like sometimes dogs just got to eat. And I might have even said to you, like, look, you're not going to super jive with this person, but like they will pay you, right? Like you rent.
Yeah,
will
and
get
there are
paid
times
and all that.
where you have to take that. Like you have to absolutely take that introduction.
And I
go
want
with
those
it.
introductions too, right?
Yeah.
Like there's some things you just have to do to pay the bills and everything. The other side of it though, and like I'm not sure that I've been so honed as to think Frank Tech, Frank Production, or I think, oh, here's 2 very interesting people that will find a way to work together.
Absolutely.
And even if they don't work together, these 2 people should know each other.
Well, I'm very proud of like when I can successfully connect 2 people through an introduction in business. And I don't get very jealous if they then go off and create good stuff without me. That though took me a while to get there. Because at first I was very much like, oh, well, where's my, I was a part of this, like, because I love when 2 creative people get to go and create fun things. And like, I want to be a part of it. Less about money, but like, what are you guys doing? Like, that looks cool. I love being a part of like producing cool creative shit, which is often who I get to introduce to each other, right? A lot of people in my world are either in front of the camera or behind the camera, and they need to be connected. So I get a lot of influencers, or I get a lot of actors or singers and musicians who are looking for a production company or access to an executive that can help them achieve something. So the biggest kind of pool of introductions that I find myself making are between creative and, I guess, business.
Like maker and spender, maker and payer. Yeah. How about a shitty introduction? Have you had any?
Happens all the time. Happens
all
all the time. And I will say, like, there are different things that make introductions go wrong. Like, for instance, if I were to introduce you to somebody, but let's say you then ignore the introduction. After you were like, hey, Frank, could you introduce me to so-and-so? Yeah. And then for whatever reason, you don't get back in time. And the person that I have introduced you to is like the first to reach out and be like, hey, what's this about? Like, would love to know more. And then you ignore, or I find out later that from that person that you were not quick to schedule the meeting or whatever. Never again.
Bridge burned. Totally fair.
I am very protective over my creative people and my business people, but like, I think like a shitty introduction is when that unfolds. introductions happen all the time. I think I praise when people reach out to me through email or LinkedIn or whatever. I'm kind of good at responding to whoever reaches out because you never know like where an opportunity lies.
Yeah.
I've gotten better over the years of like flushing out when I can like what I can say no to or what I should say no to and like getting there quickly because I don't want to waste anybody's time. But also you can kind of tell when somebody's looking for something that's out of my control or out of my reach. And I don't want to ever like lead people on that I'm going to be the solution to them. But I don't think that like if you were to introduce me to somebody and it wasn't a personality match or the project went wrong, I would never look back to you to be like, well, fuck Bill for making that introduction. Like, no, you don't know. You're just doing something nice. You thought that there could potentially be something good
and
there.
I think that's maybe happened a time or two with us where I'm like, oh, this could be a good pairing and it turns out to not work or whatever. But even that, I think you can hip pocket, barely. I think you can hip pocket that for a time when it might be useful down the road too. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Have you ever made an introduction that you're like, to this day, you're like, I made that happen?
Yes, I have. I think several times. Like, that's kind of been my position, right? Like in my, as you pointed out, in my more recent and later years, has been like, it just happened this morning. Somebody hit me up and said, hey, do you have any connects at this place? I have connects at that place. I put these two people in contact. Now things are progressing in a really good way. It's only been, 3 hours, 4 hours, but she's already on the docket to have a nice conversation.
Love that.
I think that's wonderful. It makes me feel good to be of some kind of use in this world and rooting for my friend.
When somebody reaches out or introduces themselves to you, is there a platform or a medium or a tone that you are most receptive to?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're not already friends, because, text me, right? Like that's, if with you and I, that's how we do it, right? Like when I have a new person.
Although Bill's also recently got me into Slack, which I was never a big Slack user. I know it's like not brand fucking new.
Yeah.
I have a small team that I can usually just text.
Yes.
Or I'm a big old school, I was told like, pick up the phone, like make the phone call.
Don't ever call me. Don't ever call
Stop.
me. No, that's like showing up to my.
Yeah, we don't really
just knock
phone
on your
front
actually. Fucking door, right? No,
that's not the same thing as knocking on the door.
Even worse, I have a friend who FaceTimes me. Professionally, LinkedIn, right? Hit me up on LinkedIn. And what I would say is like, just be authentic.
I love LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn quite a bit.
Yeah, well, just like in general, like when you get to the people who are like, oh, I've admired, like I don't need that kind of fluffing. You didn't really admire. Like I work, right? I do cool stuff, I think, but nobody's like admiring this last thing or this. Let's just get to the point we want to talk about.
Sure.
So like, just be concise and respectful of time, and I'll be very happy to connect you if I can.
I also find that like, know what you're asking for. Like, why me? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, be clear about what you're trying to get from me so that I can quickly get to I'm your guy or I'm not, like in being able to introduce. And I find that a lot of like people out of college will just want the general relationship. And I'm like, sure. But, if we're going to connect, it'd be awesome if there was an action item or something, that we could execute together rather than just a general introduction.
Has there been a brand to memory in our discussions that you've introduced me to?
So you have introduced me to several brands. The biggest one would be in a clothing perspective, the Knickerbocker. Bill is my style icon. And anytime I see Bill wearing something cute, I'm like, oh, that's really cute. Anytime I've made a comment, you send me something from them, which has been very sweet of you. We're both teeny beanie lovers. We wear tiny little teeny beanie hats. And then also you were wearing this really cute sweater one day, and then you sent me the sweater, which was delightful.
The New York Times collab, yeah.
Yes, with the brand, the Knickerbocker, which I have become since obsessed with. You're much better at that than I am. I will say though, like when it comes to when brands introduce themselves to me, like social media is the biggest way that I'm probably, introducing new brands, or like LinkedIn, which is a social platform. But I'm the type of person who interacts with my ads that get delivered to me. Like I will tell you if I like that or if I didn't like that. And I will absolutely double down if I'm buying something from social media, which I don't do very often, but God, sometimes they get you. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I get why you're sending me this ad.
Targeted advertising. You're part of a
it
very
works,
important
but I don't hate it. Somehow it got this bad rap. I mean, I think because of the analytical side of my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why this is money spent on targeting me. And I can appreciate that because I understand how much work and like strategy is behind the ad being delivered.
Yeah.
So I'm into like social media introducing me to brands and all that kind of stuff. I don't find it annoying at all.
I find it the exact opposite.
That's fair.
It's fucking insidious.
Yeah, I think you're the majority.
I was on a call the other day. I was on a Zoom call and my phone was sitting there and these guys on the other end of the phone talked about some brand that they like that I do not like. And now it's coming through my feed, right? Just ads one after the next about.
But then do you like tell social media like yes or no to this ad?
When I get pissy, then I get like irrelevant, see it too often. Yeah. I start to get like, I start to curb it. But yeah, I think it can be super insidious. At the same time, like you're right. It's gotten smart enough to connect you to things that you would find useful and interesting.
Well, I think that the strategy of brands having to introduce themselves either for the first time or rebranding, reintroductions, like there's a ton of different techniques and strategies, and I find it incredibly fascinating.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now, but I will say this, like my objection to the IG ad serve and all that sort of stuff is the idea that I've never heard of your fucking brand and you want me to buy something right now. I think of it's much more of like a cocktail party. Let's all mingle. Let's say hi to each other. Maybe something interesting. We have a second, third follow-up conversation, mingle a little bit more. If I'm interested, I'll come back around. Do you know what I mean?
That's how you feel about ads.
That's how I feel about ads. That's how I feel about brands. Don't fucking like try to get me to click on your stupid shit and buy it right now. Even if I do like it, let me come to it in my time.
Fair enough. Well, I think that hopefully this is a cool podcast that people will like feel proud to introduce to their friends or share it. You know what I mean? I think that we're going to have some really cool people on and we're going to talk about some shit that
I'm excited about.
Like, things that we would, again, be talking about even if there weren't people here. Lights, cameras. It just helps. It adds. I find myself very comfortable on camera. I will never watch an episode probably back of this.
No,
I have
no
problem talking all day on it. I never want to watch it.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that to Aramis to figure out for us.
Yeah, I want other people to validate and tell us if it looks good. And stuff.
Or terrible.
Or sound good. Amelia. So yeah, hopefully this is a podcast that people will want to use to, build relationships and introduce to and share with their friends and stuff like that. Hopefully we find our audience.
Yeah, and learn. I mean, it's something that I wish I had years and years ago. And even now, I mean, I still do that. I still listen to pods all the time about shit that I can get better at and things like, whether it's like in profession, like marketing podcasts, or just things that were like, I need to find like sanity and independence away from being like a consumed Brooklyn dad kind of thing. Yeah, I got to get the fuck out of that mold and do things. So yes,
we're going to do some fun stuff, hopefully with brands and advertisers. We're going to do some cool stuff on social media. So follow along on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then we'll hopefully be everywhere that you can listen to your podcasts. Let's do this.
Yeah.
First one.
See you next time. Up and over.
No, you do it. There you go. That was easier. I want to hold your hand.
Oh, okay. Just a moment.